Welcome everybody to the Politically Incorrect podcast with Nat Camara, Evaldo Barros, Deshaun Barros. I am here today with a special guest. His name is Phil Rodrigues, and we're going to be talking about some very interesting topics. Phil, why don't you introduce yourself?
How's it going, everybody?
It's going well.
It's going, man.
Good.
It's going, man. Living, I tell you that. I'm living. So, some topics today we're going to talk about taxes. We're going to talk about, beta males. We're going to talk about BMWs. And Evaldo could probably fill us in a little bit more on this topic because as he's going to be heading this show today. But we want to open up the show with tax rates in the United States of America.
Before we do that, though, we have to mention our sponsor of the week. Take it off, Evaldo. You know who it is.
Is that Mr. O'Rourke?
Yes, it is. So we have to pay homage to the sponsor of the week for this video.
What Matt is talking about is it's going to be a segment that we'll do every so often, and it's going to be titled BMW, not the BMW that you're typically familiar with, but Beta Male of the Week. And our episode today is sponsored by that Beta Male of the Week, and his name is none other than Mr. Beta O'Rourke himself. So he is our special sponsor of the week, Mr. O'Rourke.
Yeah, we'll get into him a little bit later on, but I'll kick it back to Deshaun for the start of the show.
So really, this focus today is we've got a special guest, Phil Rodrigues, and he's here and he's going to talk about beta males. We're going to talk about male and masculinity in the culture we live in today and how masculinity has been under attack by the left in such a huge way in the very feministic groups in which they try to build up females, but they also try to destroy manhood, which I feel is just contradictory to actually building a strong society with strong family units when you have to degrade another gender in order for you to feel better about yourselves. And I think we're going to really touch on some of those issues today. So one issue I want to talk about is the tax issue in America. One of the biggest things that we see from the left and a lot of Democratic candidates who are running today are running on a income tax rate as far as for the rich. Is the left's biggest argument about how we want to pay for free college and free this and free that is we're just going to keep taxing the rich. We're going to tax them. I think Bernie Sanders what was his slogan for his race? I think he wanted to tax 70% marginal tax for the rich.
Yeah, as far as the Dem platform, if we're going to talk about that, it's been, we've heard numbers 45%, 70%, as high as 95% in some cases. I just don't understand how you think you're going to be able to get those types of tax rates, because eventually what will end up happening is if you enforce those types of taxes, they're just going to move their money somewhere else.
Oh, man. Look at Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo is it's tax-free, but everything is so overpriced. I think for a condo in Monte Carlo it was going up for like $100 million, but people who have money put their money in places where taxes are free, and they're willing to pay any amount of price in order for their money to be safe, in order for their money not to be taxed and taken away from them. And I want people to really understand this, is that even in Massachusetts where we live in today, there's a massive tax here in Massachusetts. Our name is Taxachusetts as a nickname. So taxes just in Massachusetts is ridiculous. I think I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and she said that on a bonus, they tax you over at least 40% of a bonus. If you get a bonus here in Massachusetts, they're going to take 40% from you. Now, for me, I want less taxes. I don't know about you. I want less taxes. And on this case, if we're talking about taxes, really, I believe that we should have a tax. And I believe that taxes should be at a standard rate. I don't think that taxes should be fluctuating. I think the American people and anybody who's American, anybody who lives in this country should have a standard taxes that is going to pay across the board. And that's just me. But my point is that the tax situation from the left of how we're going to pay for free college, how we're going to do different things, to tax the rich is not going to help. And I don't know about you guys. I don't know what your take on it. I want to hear, maybe Phil, maybe you could talk about a little bit about this.
Yeah, well, I saw something actually this morning, kind of a breakdown of what these Democratic politicians' net worth is. and I think Pelosi is worth $100 million. Elizabeth Warren is about $10 million, and then if you just keep going down the well-known names, I mean, you'd be surprised that they want to tax the rich, but them themselves are part of that rich,
Although
group that they're
it's
talking
funny you
about.
bring up Elizabeth Warren, because I know that she's part of that crowd that wants to tax the rich, and I think her cap was actually up to $10 million. So it's kind of funny. Somebody can fact check me, but I'm pretty sure that's what she said. If you made over $10 million, that's when you would get hit with that higher tax rate. It's just funny that that's her net worth. So maybe she's trying to dodge those taxes as well.
Oh yeah, and I mean, if you look at Bernie Sanders, I think Bernie Sanders was on an interview with him. I think it was on Fox, either Fox or I'm not sure the news station right now. I can't particularly remember, but I remember he was actually talking to them and they were asking him questions. And it was actually Fox. He was on Fox, and they were interviewing him. And they had asked him a question about his percentage of a tax rate, because they had mentioned before that he had set a 70% tax rate. And you could see as they were asking him about this that they had asked him, what was your percentage again? What would you actually tax the rich? And he said, you know what? He was kind of frail on it. He said, you know what? I tax him around 50 to 55%. So his standard tax, you can tell that these ideas of wanting to tax the wealthy is really something that they're not really willing to do. They're saying that in order to compensate for their promises of making free this and free that. But really, America, we're paying for that stuff. We're all going to be paying for things aren't just free for no reason. We're all paying for them.
I mean, all you have to do is look at what's happening in Venezuela. You had what was once one of the richest nations in South America, who completely turned socialist. Everything being provided for the government, and the facts are there. What ended up happening is you saw, a rise in health standards and education standards and just overall life quality standards. There was a short-term rise, but what happened is eventually you ran out of other people's money, and now you're looking at what's happening in Venezuela now, where they're becoming one of the poorest, if not one of the poorest nations in South America. So yeah, we may see a slight benefit in the short term, but once we run out of other people's money, and the idea of just printing money, it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't, and the currency is going to go down.
So now you have people in Venezuela who are far worse than what they ever were before. They went from paying maybe $1 for bread to now paying $100 for bread, and that's the reality of what socialism brings. There isn't a time in history in which socialism has been a good thing.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
And this is coming from somebody who grew up in high school who believed in communism and socialism. But when I actually started to do the research and dig into it, my idols at that time were Joseph Stalin and those types of people. But once you start digging into it a little bit deeper, you find and realize that socialism, it just doesn't work, and in fact it creates more poverty than capitalism ever did. Capitalism has caused people to come out of poverty, and is in my opinion, one of the single reason why this nation is so blessed and so rich, and why the vast majority of the people here prosper.
Oh man, that's
What do you say to those? Because we see what's going on in Venezuela. What do you say to those people that think like, well, that's not real socialism? They undercut it.
That's an excuse, because when I claimed to be a socialist as well, that was my excuse. Oh, it's never been done according to what Karl Marx wanted it to be done, and that's true. But what we have to factor in is the human nature. It's human nature to be productive for incentives. If everybody is getting paid the same and doing the same work, why am I going to work harder than the next person to produce for you? Or why am I going to do a hard laborer's job when somebody else is sitting in a cushy office in air conditioning, making the same thing and getting the same benefits that I would be getting? There's no incentives there. And the other factor is that we're just people are just, there's a natural greedy factor there.
Oh yeah, of course, man, of course.
And actually, there's a book that Rush Limbaugh always talks about every Thanksgiving holiday. I forget the name of it, but it's actually the real history that the Indians went through, and they tried socialism. The Pilgrims, not the Indians, and they tried it, and it didn't work because they started noticing what you mentioned. People were like getting lazy. those that didn't work as hard, and those that were working hard were like, well, why am I making all this effort?
Somebody
So
just take it.
somebody else can benefit from it. That's not working as
It's
hard.
just
No,
it's
man,
it's
that's not-
human nature.
It didn't work.
It's just human nature for us to be incentive driven. I want
Right.
to work hard because I want to provide for my family and I want to be successful. Yeah, there are people out there who don't want to be, and unfortunately, they become a drain on
And
society.
now you've got candidates. Who's that Asian candidate? That's Democratic Asian candidate. That's trying
Is
to
that
introduce
Yang?
the annual income. Or
Yes,
monthly
he
income,
wants
basic.
to.
What's his name? I can't remember his
I
name.
believe it's
I know
Yang.
what you're talking about.
I think it's
Honestly,
something like that.
I don't think it's really going to matter. He's not going to make it
So
far.
he's like trying to use the excuse that, well, techs are going to take over all the jobs, so we should take from the tech companies and start giving everybody like a basic monthly income. I think one of the whole drives is to make people dependent on government, and so government can always be in power. I think that's the whole thing, is to take away incentives to work and like kind of provide for yourself. That's what's going on here.
Well, that's why you have a huge group of people that will always vote Democrat because they know that they're going to keep getting those benefits.
So he's come out with that, and so has Zuckerberg. He's made a speech in the UN to come out with basic monthly incomes for everybody. And I think Bezos was another one. Not Bezos though, the guy in charge of Tesla. I think he was another one.
Elon Musk.
we don't
Elon
even
Musk,
have
yeah.
to go down that route. So what you're talking about is he wants to provide $1,000 a month to people.
Yeah.
As just a basic income, but all that's going to do is it's eventually just going to drive up the pricing of
For
all the other
everything,
commodities.
right.
So eventually you're going to get back to square one where people can't even afford that, even with that. Second, then you get rid of that incentive drive. So they've already done this in Finland. They've actually did a test case in Finland, and they actually just voted to stop it because they realized that it actually had no positive benefits, except for the fact that people were excited that they were receiving $500 or $1,000 a month. Yeah, I'd be excited to get free money too. But they saw no increase in people actually searching for jobs. They saw no increase in people trying to get further education while getting that money. People just stayed home.
Right.
So in Finland, they just voted that they're no longer going to continue.
That's my whole point. I think they
universal
purposely
income.
want to take away the incentive drive. That's my whole point. I think
Right.
they know what that's going to result
Because
in.
once you're right, because if you can get the vast majority of people just, sucking off of government, then they're going to just be dependent on it.
And of course, because even when you look at some of the situations that I'm in, you know what I mean, with being young and going to school and things of that nature, most of the funds that are allocated to public universities are all federal funded grants. And even people's jobs are on the line as far as grants and government funding and things of that nature. So the government has its hands in everything. And really what that is to secure ideology. What the government wants to do is to secure an ideology that all of us needs to be dependent on the government. And one thing that you'll find with this is that there's no ideas being thrown around. There's no actual innovation. There's no actual incentive to grow.
You go to a college in which it's kind of hard to voice your opinions, especially as a conservative. I mean, how many times have you tried to speak up and you've been shut down?
Oh man, plenty of times.
Don't get me wrong. If I get a fat reparations check in my mail, I'm cashing it. If you're dumb enough to say I'm going to cash it.
So I mean, honestly, and this all ties into with this tax and things of that nature. It all ties into manhood and it all ties into masculinity. And I'm going to tell you how. In this case, in many years before 2019, if we go back, way back, taxes have always been around. The Boston Tea Party, I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with that one, as how as England was taxing the United States on tea and all the commodities that they were going through. And one of the things that we weren't going to have was we weren't going to be funding or giving money back to a place where we had just left. And I feel like if we're going to move on, if we're going to grow as a country and as people, we cannot continue to be funding something that's going to crush our idea of growth. And in this case, men have been on attack for such a long time with these groups coming up, not only from the federal government, but from feminist movements, from the transgender movement to the gay movements we've got going on, is that we're under attack. And it's amazing to me how men who try to stand up for their own families, who try to provide for their families, who try to take care of their wives and their kids, their instincts are crushed. that they can't be men because, oh, wait a minute, your wife has to work, or and I want to put this in context, is that when a man tries to step up for his household to take care of them, and yet the government takes almost half of the paycheck, we got a problem. And this man is now working 3, 4 jobs to provide for a family because every paycheck he gets, almost a quarter or if not a third of the check is gone because he's got to pay for Jimmy and John who's sitting on the corner collecting. So that's just ridiculous to me. That's ridiculous to me. That's just foul to me. And the only reason why the government has any power is because people give it to them. By giving their pockets. And now we have men running around here who just aren't men anymore. We have men running around here thinking that they're dudes, thinking that they're men, can't even get a job, can't hold a job, want to live off and mooch off the next man, and don't want to provide for themselves. So if you're really thinking that a larger tax rate is going to solve our issues, you're just going to make a hole deeper than we're ever going to be able to climb out of. Because I tell you what, if we continue to tax the middle class America the way they're being taxed now, and then continue to tax the wealthy, we're going to have a problem here. Like Matt just said, Finland tried it. All these other countries are trying these socialistic ideas, and yet they're failing. So liberal Democrats, these left liberal Democrats, these anti-America, it's amazing to me when I see on CNN, it was amazing. They had this square, right, and they cut it into 4 pieces like a pie. And they had all these different, they had fascism, they had anti, I think it was democratic socialism, they had Democrats, left, right. So they were what they were really pretty much doing was they were separating the political realm from the extreme left to the right, and they put it in 4 boxes. And what they said was that actually being a conservative, being a capitalist, an extreme capitalist, that's fascism. They described it as fascism.
Well, the first problem with that study there, first of all, it's CNN. So you're already listening to fake news.
Yes.
And then second,
they're not journalists. They're activists.
they've already said that they're not investigative journalists. They're going to report any anti-Trump. I can call them today, say I got some dirt on Trump, and they're going to have me on CNN. That's all they're interested in, anti-Trump network. But to get to what you're saying with fascism, and if you just look into the facts, it'll prove that argument wrong. Okay, let's look at fascism. Hitler. Okay, Hitler censored his people. What's the party that censors people? It ain't the Republicans. It's the Democrat Party. Hitler took away the guns from the German people. Who's the party that wants to take away guns from the American people?
The Democratic
It's the Democrats. Party. Hitler was big into killing anybody who didn't fit his agenda, anybody with a birth defect, who was mentally unstable, or just didn't fit his genetic ideology.
Oh, yeah.
And what party is okay with murdering babies, even if they've already been born?
Oh, the Democratic Party. You don't gotta say it.
I mean, I've just proved CNN wrong. So, but let's get our sponsor of the week.
Actually, let me just add to that. If you actually see Dinesh D'Souza, he's a really good conservative writer and movie maker. He wrote a book called, I think it was The Big Lie or something like that. It was one of those books that he recently made. And he talks about how Nazi Hitler, got their playbook on what they did from the left-wing Democrats, the racist Democrats back in those days. So their whole idea of the Nazis, that is, of making Jews at the bottom of the pile and getting rid of them, they got that idea from what the blacks were being done at the Democratic Party. But I just looked up on Wikipedia the definition of fascism. It's actually contrary to what you just said, because Google, is controlled by mainstream. And fascism here, in their definition, is a form of radical, listen to this, right-wing, authoritarian, ultra-nationalism. Nationalism. Just because you're nationalist doesn't mean you're a fascist, because there's been a lot of great leaders that weren't fascists, that were nationalists. They loved their country. Characterized by dictatorial power.
Oh, man.
That's opposite to what you just said, because they're labeling it as a right-wing type of thing, but it's always been left-wing leaning. That's amazing.
Oh, man, because, the left has done a good job with manipulating the language and the culture we live in. And they're good at actually taking words that used to mean something else and turning it into something totally different. The opposite, flipping things.
The left is good with narrative because they control the media, they control Hollywood, and they control the school. So I bet you I can name just a few misconceptions right now that you'll never hear them say, and that you probably don't even know if you're not familiar with it. For one, Martin Luther King was a Republican. You'll never hear them say that. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. You'll never hear them say that. There were actually black slave owners during those days, but you'll never hear them say that. What are some other things? It wasn't America that was racist and caused the Civil Rights War. It was Democrats, all of them. The people that killed indigenous people that were first here was Jacksonian Democrats. Okay, they'll never have you say that because they control the narrative. They want to deflect the blame. All the stuff that they've done, they want to put it on America. No, it wasn't America that did it. It was you. It was certain Americans that did all these things, and other Americans had to stop it. So they're real good at branding your narrative. And now you have a president that understands that, and he's good at branding too.
Oh, yeah.
He's got some good branding out there. Sleepy Joe, Pocahontas. So he's firing back with the same methods and fire they fired with. That's why I thought he was perfect to run this time around.
Well, I mean, Phil, we haven't really heard much from you. So what do you think about some of these issues? What's going on?
Well, I just wanted to say one thing on taxes.
Yeah.
Can you guys ever picture a Democratic presidential campaigner that didn't have to pander for votes by talking about taxes?
Oh man.
Could you ever see that in your lifetime?
No, man.
I mean,
I feel like that's really
what do
the
they
platform that they run on. I
Yep.
mean, that's really the only campaign slogan I've seen.
well, when they get into office,
Yeah.
what happens? What happens to everything that they said during their campaign?
It doesn't seem
Gone.
It goes right out the window.
Yep.
I think America's really.
And their voters don't care.
Yeah, they don't really care, really. And what's amazing is now we have an actual candidate who's trying to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have a president who actually gets stuff done, and in record time too.
And then I also wanted to also touch on Dinesh D'Souza. I've been a big fan of documentaries for a long time now. Probably what sparked it was September 11th, because I noticed, at that time I was still in college, and I planned on being getting a major in telecommunications, and I was just noticing how the news was reporting what happened. So that's kind of when it started. But I mean, I kept with documentaries, and Dinesh D'Souza, he's made some for people who are not book readers. His recent one, Death of a Nation, kind of goes into a lot about
Tell us a
how
little bit more
the
about
Democratic.
Dinesh for some people who don't know who that is.
So he's an immigrant who's here legally. He did it the right way, and he is a book writer, a filmmaker. He goes to colleges, and he has discussions, debates, which sometimes turns into a show, because there's some left-leaning people there that they make it a point for their voice to be heard. But he'll shut them down.
He was also a policy consultant in the Reagan administration too.
Yeah, I mean he there was a documentary about Hillary Clinton that he came out with, which I highly recommend.
Definitely didn't break the internet.
I think it's Hillary's America.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hillary's America.
I don't think Trump was elected president just yet. So it came out before, and I think it came out before Jim Comey famously came out and said that the investigations regarding Benghazi wasn't a done deal.
Yeah.
There was more that had to be looked at. So, but yeah, I definitely recommend Dinesh D'Souza's documentaries. If you're kind of in the middle and you're not going to get, if you're in the middle and you want to see some exposure to what everybody's saying about the Democratic Party, I mean, Dinesh D'Souza is a good place to start.
Yeah.
There's other filmmakers that are out there that are trying to expose them for what they truly are. Mm-hmm. And Death of a Nation was great. I saw that in theaters. It was awesome, kind of seeing everybody in the crowd get up and cheer, give the movie a standing ovation. That was a great moment to be a part of. because I did watch it during opening weekend, and it's definitely a medium that I'm a big fan of. I know it's not for everybody, but
Yeah.
In that book I was talking about in the movies, it's called The Big Lie.
The
It's
Big Lie,
exposing the Nazi roots of the American left.
Mhm.
He shows you how the Nazi playbook for what they did with the Jews came out of the American left playbook with what they did with slavery and all that stuff.
The other thing that people don't realize during that time is, and Valdo had briefly touched upon it, is all that genetics ideology that Hitler was following, that was actually all happening in the United States before Germany adopted it. They saw what we were doing, like Valdo said, and they adopted
Exactly.
They adopted it.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And all the Democrats, they're trained with following through with the narrative that has been painted. All this stuff that the Democrats have brushed under the rug. You notice they've never apologized for slavery, Jim Crow, because they don't want to come off as if they did it. They want to paint it on America. But again, they all the Democrats now they follow the same kind of training when they're out there talking. Cory Booker just did it the other day. He was in an interview. And he said that when he was referring about when the Democrats were filibustering during the civil rights voting, they were filibustering, they wouldn't let the vote go through. He mentioned Strom Thurmond, which is the only former Dixiecrat or racist Democrat that converted over to being a Republican. He's the only one that did that, and that goes along with their lie that they said, well, there was a big switch that happened with Strom Thurmond. So they're trying to sell you the picture that one day all the racist Democrats decided to go become the race that became Republicans. So now Republicans are the ones that are racist, which is just idiotic. It doesn't make sense. But if you notice, Cory Booker, he mentioned only that name when he was talking about it because he didn't want to paint all of the Democrats as the ones filibustering when all the Republicans voted yes on the civil rights voting and all the Democrats voted no. So they still follow that same playbook till this day. It's so interesting.
So let's move on to Mail of the Week. You have any more information
Beta Mail
on
of the
our
Week.
sponsor?
Yes. Beta Mail of the Week.
And then we'll get
Come on,
into
nail is high to the wall, please.
BMW segment. BMW Beta Mail of the Week. I think
Come
one
on,
day
man. We
we're
take
gonna
no
start
shorts on
we
this
should
channel.
do a top
None,
5 list
baby.
for each
None.
one of us. Each one of us one day will do a top
If you're
5 list.
upset, we'd love for you
I'll
to
give you-
email
I'll give
us.
you a-
Beta Mail of all time.
Email us at thepoliticallyincorrectpod@gmail.com if you would like to talk about any of these subjects. Of course, we invite the left to try to, even if you want to come on and talk, I'm sure we want to make a culture or a conversation that's inviting, but we also we don't tolerate baloney. Okay, baloney. That's what a lot of it is. This is baloney. So, and we'll definitely, if you want to fact check us, if you want to come on, please email us, follow us on Instagram, The Politically Incorrect Podcast. Like us on Facebook, The Politically Incorrect Podcast on Facebook. Me, Matt, and Evaldo, we're here to shed light on some of the lies that have been told to the American people through the media, through schooling, and through some of the outlets in which should not be promoting an agenda, but actual learning. And this is unfortunate. And they've created a culture in which men have just been brutally attacked. And now we have beta males.
I'm going to give you guys a spoiler. President Obama will be on my list.
Matt's talking about the top. Hey, we're each going to have at some point.
He's
a top
on that
5
list.
Beta males of all.
You see how he
time.
crosses his legs?
Top 5 beta males.
The top 5 Bamoa beta male.
We all know who runs that relationship. That's Michael Obama. Michelle Obama.
But this week we're
running that relationship there.
So I think Phil had some really good points on these topics here.
Let's-
So let's let Phil take us away for a few minutes and just talk a little bit about masculinity in this culture. And I'm sure you've come in contact with that, being a married man yourself and having to provide for your family.
Before we do that, let me introduce our beta male of the week, and then we'll touch base with Phil. So our beta male of the week is Beto O'Rourke. And he's the beta male of the week because he was recently on The View about a week ago, and that's a show led by Whoopi Goldberg, Jane Behar, Jane Behar, and Meghan McCain.
I can't even
And
watch
I
that
can't
show.
stand those
I
women.
can't even watch that show, dude.
So he was on there revamping his campaign because his first efforts failed. So now he's rebranding himself, and he's trying to appeal to the pro-feminist, anti-men voter bloc in women. So he's on there looking real pathetic and apologizing for a
Looking
couple of
real
things.
pathetic. I like the
He's
language.
gonna be addressing. We're gonna show the video. He's gonna be addressing his picture on the cover of Vanity Fair that is titled "Born to Be an American President." He's gonna apologize for that because he's gonna tell you that he has certain privileges that kind of make him have put him in advantageous situations. And one of those privileges is being white. And then he's also going to apologize for saying that he's a part-time dad because that was really offensive to his wife. So he's just pandering to the lady voters. And while he's out there, he just looks real beta-ish. It looks real weak and pathetic. So that's why he's our beta male of the week. I want the guys to see the video real quick, and then we'll flip it over to Phil. He's got a lot of good insight about beta males in general. Let's just go to the video real quick.
Mr. O'Rourke, you've been a hot topic on the show. You did a Vanity Fair cover to announce your campaign, and you said you were, quote, born to be in it. You went across the country alone on a road trip after you lost your election, and you said you, quote, sometimes help raise your kids. These are things in my mind that a female candidate wouldn't be able to get away with. Do you think you can get away with more because you're a man? And do you have any regrets about launching on the cover of Vanity Fair?
You're right. There are things that I have been privileged to do in my life that others cannot. And I think the more that I travel and listen to people and learn from them, the clearer that becomes to me. When women in this country are paid 80 cents on the dollar that a man makes, African American women 61 cents, Latinas 53 cents. When you have 10 times the wealth in white America than you do in black America, when you have the largest prison population on the face of the planet, and it's disproportionately comprised of people of color, the systematic foundational discrimination that we have in this country in every aspect of life is something that I have not experienced in my lifetime. And I've had advantages that others could not enjoy. So being aware of that, and then doing everything in my power to help correct that, working with others, ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment, for example, so that it is beyond the shadow of a doubt that women will be treated equally in this country. Staring in the face the legacy of slavery and segregation and Jim Crow and continued suppression in our economy, in our democracy, in our system of justice, it's the only way that you begin the work of repair and stop visiting those injustices on the generations that follow. So yes, we have our work cut out for us in this country.
What about the part-time dad thing?
Yeah, so
You
listen.
got some flack for that one.
Absolutely, and I deserved it.
You deserved that. What did your wife
absolutely.
say? I'm sure your wife wasn't thrilled.
So listen, in a real ham-handed way, I was trying to acknowledge that she has a lion's share of the responsibility during this campaign.
As most women do.
That's right. And not only does she work, she is the principal caregiver to our kids,
Right.
is supporting me, campaigns with me as she just did in New Hampshire this last weekend, and trying to acknowledge that by saying she's raising our kids, sometimes with my help. I called Amy after I got that criticism, and I said, tell me, am I saying this wrong? And she said, I know what you're trying to say, and I really appreciate where you're coming from. But the way in which you said it sounds flip.
Yeah.
It minimizes what I'm doing and, frankly, what a lot of other women in this country are doing. So you need to rethink this and say this differently.
right.
So listen, I have a lot to learn and still am, and I'm learning from the best.
Said that very nicely.
That's right. Yeah.
Nice
But
of it.
I mean, really, man, it is absolutely obscene to me that when you talk about people who want to create diversity and create change, and yet they're still talking about things that really in this country shouldn't even be relevant today. Honestly, some of the things that they're talking about.
What's interesting though is the stuff that he's mentioning about the legacies of this country was all implemented by his own party. That's what's so fascinating.
I mean, it's obscene. It's obscene to me, man. Obscene.
I mean, there was a lot of things that he mentioned that we could actually have other shows on. We could actually, I would actually like to revisit that video because he talks about the wage gap and why people of color are in prison. I mean, do you want to just start locking up white people just because they're white to make it more equal?
And I'll plug this. If you want to read something on the legacy of slavery as it pertains to Black America, read Thomas Sowell. He has a few books on income and education that pertains to African Americans after slavery and within the 100 years after slavery, and he compares it to now. Thomas Sowell, go read one of his books.
All right, but let's move this over to Phil. Phil, what do you got for us?
All right, guys. So, I just want to call out what kind of started this concern for a proud alpha male. I consider myself an alpha male. I just want to say a little bit about myself. So I'm happily married. I have two beautiful daughters. My 8-year-old daughter. I'm not pushing any gender role on her, but we knew early on that she needed an activity to kind of bolster her confidence in herself. And she's actually a brown belt in karate now. She's a junior leader at USA Karate, and she is working on getting her junior black belt. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of that. That I may not have a son, but I'm raising two strong girls in my household. And I'm a business analyst for CVS Corporate during the day, but by night I am a top rope promotion professional wrestler in training. So my character
that's
is
something, huh?
yeah. So
That's two different things.
two
man.
different. It's business like during the day, and just
And by night,
in a
drop
wrestling
kicking
ring.
people by
Yep.
night.
And in a wrestling ring by night, and I'm hoping to make the show and be on one of their shows later this summer. So I'm very excited about that. There's a lot of hard work that's going into this.
Awesome.
But
Well, if you want to send us any links or anything that would help you promote that,
Definitely.
Just send it to us and we'll make
Yeah,
sure we
we'll
put it in
definitely
the,
plug
Definitely.
that.
in the
Definitely plug
description.
that.
But
for
go
you.
ahead, Phil.
so in my character, it's funny. My character is and I've always had this nickname, the Portuguese Powerhouse. And the Portuguese Powerhouse, he actually
I want to let you know that that's racist, especially being Portuguese and white. But you can continue.
Portuguese Powerhouse.
Just being Portuguese, you're a white male, especially Portuguese. Portuguese, since we pretty much invented
Yeah.
slavery, it's the
You
most
guys were
evil thing out
conquerors.
there.
That would be.
But I'm getting off topic.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I know that you touched on our heritage in episode 2.
Yeah.
So definitely, if anybody hasn't listened to episode 2, please go check it out. Matt talks about his heritage, and he also speaks for me as well regarding the Portuguese heritage. But my character, I made it known that the character is there to bask in the fear of other men, and he's there to exterminate all the soy boys, the beta males, the pretty boys.
We're gonna lose our
in
sponsors
the in
now.
the in the wrestling world. But the reason why that character that take on what he's there to do came about was because I noticed that pre-Trump, there wasn't really an attack on masculinity. Post-Trump, there is, and I'm gonna quote Paul Joseph Watson from Infowars, who I'm very disappointed that Facebook has banned, because he was pretty much my all-time favorite conservative speaker on social media, and he's currently banned. Luckily, he's still on Twitter, so I can still see his content and hear him out. But he knows it, I know it, and pretty much everybody in this room knows it, that there's a war on men.
Oh yeah.
There's a war on men.
That's definitely for sure, man.
And it didn't really concern me until I saw the cover of the Hollywood Reporter on March 7, 2018. And on the cover, the headline, and it's kind of funny that the women of the View are attacking Beto for the headline, saying what it said. And again, I'm sure he had no choice in that matter. But this headline from the Hollywood Reporter says, "Triumph of the Beta Male." And I just want to make it known that the article itself, it doesn't match the cover. It doesn't match the headline, of the article. But it's just amazing that the Hollywood Reporter, they saw an opportunity to promote their agenda, to be anti masculinity. They saw an opportunity and they took it. And I feel like a lot of of the mass media is taking every opportunity they can to basically praise the beta male and bash the alpha males.
Which cover is this from 2018, if you don't mind repeating?
So March 7th, 2018, the Hollywood Reporter, and on the cover are the actors in the show Silicon Valley, and which again I have nothing against the show. I think the actors are talented, and again, the article was about the show. It was about one of the well-known actors on the show, basically leaving the show because of sexual harassment charges. So that's what the article was about. But you look at the cover, you look at the headline. It says "Triumph of the Beta Male." So they're praising the beta male, and all of the actors on the cover, they're doing something that's you wouldn't see in a masculine male. They have their hands in each other's pockets. I'm sorry, I would not feel comfortable if the four of us got up and we put our hands in each other's pockets in a straight line. I mean, it's just a bizarre thing, and it was kind of then that I started to get concerned. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I don't know if you want at this moment you would want to show the cover, and it's disturbing. You know, it's that they saw an opportunity to promote a beta male, and you know, and again, I just want to say the article doesn't reflect the headline. It doesn't reflect the cover, and I don't know if you guys want to say, you guys might be looking at it for the first time, and many of your listeners might be looking at it and hearing about it for the first time. I saw it, and I was deeply troubled.
Oh man!
And I said, where is this country going?
Well,
where this is being praised, but being a strong, man, family man, confident.
Confident.
Taking care of himself, and they've done things where they've interviewed women, even in California.
Yeah.
Super left California.
Oh, of course.
They took to the streets and they interviewed women, and they showed them two different pictures. So they have one picture where it's a skinny guy, skinny jeans, just a certain look, and then they have a picture of a guy with a shirt off. You can tell he goes to the gym. Just masculine. And they asked the women in California, and they said, who would you prefer to go out on a date with? And what do you think every single woman that they surveyed said? I want male number 2.
And male number 2 was the one who obviously looked more of a man.
Exactly.
To the gym,
exactly. So
muscle.
if real women in the world want the masculine male, why are they promoting the beta males? Why?
Yeah.
So I want to take hear from you guys.
So I think I'm going to disagree a little bit. I agree with the majority of what you said. Where I disagree is where it started. So I think this has been something in the long time making. Mm-hmm. The thing is that it's only just become mainstream,
mm-hmm. Exactly.
Especially after Trump, because Trump is considered an alpha male, so he's evil. So now the media is going to be attacking it. The reason why this is so prevalent is because, again, this is an agenda pushed by media. It's probably not supported by the vast majority of the people in the United States. We call them the silent majority, right? The same people that were claiming Hillary was going to win in a landslide. Those are the same people pushing this feminist agenda. And that's really what it is. But in my opinion, it started a long time ago. It started when the government started knocking on doors and offering women cash to not have a man in the house. When you started removing the importance of a man in the house, that's when it really started. When it became feminized, I would say probably more so in the 2000s, maybe probably more into when President Obama got elected. That's really when the media, in my opinion, really started pushing these feminist agendas, right? So now you start having the feminist movements. You're also, at the same time, you're also having gays and transgender movements that are all happening at the same time. In my opinion, this isn't coincidence. What they're doing is they want any resemblance of a man to be masculine to be overshadowed by that feminist agenda. So they want men to be feminine. That's why you see those runway shows where they're showing off new clothes and these men are coming out in skirts and
Oh, dude, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
that's what they're
bad.
doing. They're trying to get people, even in church, sometimes I'll talk about it because sometimes I remember going to a convention and I say, you know, to these church leaders, we have to be careful even in the church because some of these fads that are happening in the church, our young men are picking up on it and they look very feminine. You know, the types of clothing that they wear, the tight jeans like you had mentioned, the hairstyles, just the way that they act. A lot of them just seem very feminine, and that's in all walks of life, it seems. It's just that's what happens when you rely on the media telling your kids how they should be raised and how they should act and things like that.
And again, you know, I think it's important to say too that that like, and I'm just speaking for myself. I have no issues with the gay community, you know, homosexuality.
Yeah.
I have family and friends that are gay, and I love them like brothers and sisters. That's not the issue.
I have an issue with their lifestyle, but okay.
Yeah, it's okay to have an issue with their lifestyle, but I have an issue that, you know, the people that are heterosexual
Yeah.
are being, you know, because again, the media, you know, works, you know, in many ways, many platforms.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, you know, I grew up, and Matt's going to love this part. I grew up with, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger with a new action movie every 3 to 4 months. Sylvester Stallone, new action movie every 3 to 4 months. Steven Seagal, Jean-Claude Van Damme. I grew up with that, and, you know, did it have an effect on, you know, my take on being a man and growing up and becoming a man? Yeah, I think it has, and you just kind of see, you know, what kind of movies are being promoted and pushed out there. And even and this is a hot topic, but you know, you have Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Just came out. I've watched every Marvel movie leading up to Endgame.
Same have I. Yes. Yes.
Her movie was the one movie I refused to watch just
Why?
because of her take on men. And it's like, why am I going to pay good money to go see your movie when you're just kind of putting all men in one box?
Right.
Why are you doing that?
See, yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't know about that, so I actually wanted to go see Captain Marvel, but I didn't know it was a woman that was playing the role, because I'm sure there was a man.
You're thinking of the
Shazam?
the Shazam one.
Shazam, yeah, Shazam.
But yeah, Brie Larson is an extreme feminist, and she basically talked bad about the majority of the people who would watch.
Like, she didn't want white men to judge her movie. It's like,
white old men.
all right.
And you know, I'm sorry. Then now you're alienating your base, and that movie got what it deserved. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
I mean, I'm gonna admit, when it comes out on like HBO or like Redbox, I'm probably gonna check it out. But
I'm
for
gonna
me
watch
to
Captain
go,
Marvel.
yeah, just because I want to, you know, I want to see all the movies. But again, for these feminists, and again, I feel like feminists, the rabid ones, they're kind of behind this whole push for beta males, you know.
Well, because they're not really interested in being equal with men. They want to be better than men.
Yeah, they want to be above men.
That's the problem.
And in this case, they're turning into men.
And the other problem,
Transgender man movement and all that stuff.
the other problem is that we have to realize that there are biological differences between the two. No, I don't care what you want to say. The facts are the facts. You're a male or a female. There's going to be differences. There are some things that I can't do that my wife can do, and God bless her for it. And there are some things that I can do that she can't do, and that's just the way it is. But this whole mentality of, because you want to be a man to provide for your family and to be the leader of the home, people will look at that and be like, oh, well, he's just being a Neanderthal, dragging his knuckles. And no, that's not how a true relationship. They always say, oh, you're probably abusing your wife and things like that. No, being a man is not being that way. But that's how the media wants to portray. Oh, if you're a masculine man, you must go home and beat your wife, and that's just not the way it is. You know, being a man is taking care of your family, making sure that they're doing well, and it's not you know, when we talk about being the leader in the home, it doesn't mean that the man just has the final say and the woman just, you know, sits in a corner.
Yeah,
You know?
I think we should title this episode "Be a Man."
Yeah, man.
I think we should title this episode.
Vala, you have
Be a
anything to
man.
say?
I think men,
Everybody out there, man, be a man.
not to be too preachy, men turning away from God, so they can't learn how to be real men, to provide, because it's in a man's nature and instincts to be a provider for the home. The Bible talks about that. But not even that. I think a lot of what's going on too is because of men turning away from God, you have weak men raising other men. So then it's just a cyclical effect. So you've got beta males raising kids, and then you got the family unit being primarily broken, where the man is not in the home, people having kids out of wedlock. So all of that just destroys a whole society and culture. So if you want to destroy society and culture and have power over it, just take the men away or weaken the men, and you just raise up a bunch of Beto O'Rourke's and Barack Obama, and you got yourself the perfect formula. There you go.
Well, I mean, I think you made a great point. I mean, there's an attack on the family unit, and first you need to attack the strongest unit or the strongest thing that holds that unit together, and that's the man. If you look back in the olden days, I don't want to say olden days, but even go back 100 years ago, men were the leaders of the home. I mean, it was rare that you actually see
Man of the house.
You don't
Man
even
of the
have to
house,
go
yeah.
that far, right? So if I just look at my family, right? So my grandfather raised 7 kids and was the man of the house. He worked. As a kid, I remember coming home from school, and he would come home from work, and my grandmother would be home. She'd take care of the kids and cook dinner, and that was okay. But all of a sudden, you do something like that today, and it's sexist, and it's crazy to me.
You sound like a
And one more
Neanderthal
thing,
man.
Yeah.
You sound like a crazy person.
And I'll be honest with you, my wife is a stay-at-home mom. She takes care of the kids, because I would rather my wife teaching my child than a complete stranger. It's just the way it is, and she agrees with that.
And I'll say this too. Even nature teaches you that the men are supposed to be the leaders and like the beacon of light in the home. And my son has a dog that he brings over once in a while. She's actually over this weekend, and the dogs instinctively they draw towards the man of the house or the alpha presence of the home. So this dog follows me around everywhere. So even nature teaches you. There's something there that nature is teaching you, that this there's something that they're feeling that's telling you that this is how things are. Men are supposed to be that kind of alpha male and presence. That's why dogs were called man's best friend, for that particular reason. So even nature teaches you what we're talking about.
So all the men listening, don't apologize for being a man.
Don't apologize.
Stop
man.
apologizing.
You're an alpha male. Be an alpha male. Be a man who takes care of his family. Be a man. Be a man.
And to be honest with you, just a moment of transparency for me, if it wasn't for my faith, I probably would be a beta male, because I wasn't raised by my father. My father passed away when I was young, and I was raised by a stepfather. And looking back now, he had a lot of beta tendencies. Sorry, stepdad, but you did. And if it wasn't for God getting a hold of my heart and mind, I probably would have been a Barack Obama 2.0. No, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, and I could definitely agree. I mean, I'm a foster kid, you know what I mean? So I've never been raised by my father. I mean, I've had a relationship with my father, but it's not really been too good. But instinctively, I've always had a conservative mindset, but it's always been suppressed by the majority of people who don't share the same ideas. So you can guess what you're gonna do if a majority of kids your age don't share the same ideas. You're just gonna kind of just let those things bite your tongue a little bit, per se. But I mean, even myself, there were some beta male tendencies in me, but I mean, I think that was because being raised by a single mom and seeing different things like that really affected me. But God got a hold of me, and God helped me, just like Uvaldo said. But I want to tell any man or any young man listening to this, be a man. In this generation we live in, don't be afraid to be a man. And if you have the instinct, like we said before, like every man has, you grow that instinct, throw fire on it, and just be the man we need in America today.
Yeah.
And I just have one quick barometer. If you don't know that you're a beta male, this is one way to tell if you're a beta male. Want me to give it to you? Ready? Here you go. Look at your wife if you're married. If your wife and her, if your relationship between you and your wife resemble you and your mama, you're a beta male. You're absolutely a beta male. And stop now before it's too late.
Yeah.
You're going to become weak and pathetic, and next thing you know, you're going to be on The View apologizing for having a penis and being a man.
But problem solving doesn't include whining about unfairness. It's not a problem solving trait to have. You know, just being able to whine about how unfair things are.
It's ridiculous to me the where we've gotten. I mean, I go to work and I'm a CNA. I work at a hospital, and one thing I'm surrounded by a bunch of ladies every day, so it can be rough. You know what I mean? But one thing I've noticed is that all these women, they all want to be
trucking.
independent. They all want to be this I don't need a man type thing.
Well, that's fine. You can be a strong, independent woman, but
Sure.
that I draw the line is when they say you don't need a man, because you do need a man.
Yeah, you do.
If you're really looking to start a real family, you need a man,
You need a man.
and you need a man that's not going to
Well,
be a
some
beta
ladies
man.
would say artificial
the left is
insemination.
saying,
That's
hey,
all they need.
go out and get, sperm at a sperm
Yeah,
donor.
artificial insemination. That's
Yeah,
all.
so
You
you
independent
don't-
ladies, if you want to be so independent,
Unfortunately-
all you need is the sperm donor. That's it.
Yeah, just
And
the
then
man
you-
is completely removed
Oh.
from the whole scenario.
We'll see how that works out for you guys. We'll see how that works out for you guys. I mean, honestly, that's just absolutely ridiculous to me. It's obscene to me. So I want to end off this show and let every viewer know, let every man out there, anybody listening to this, be a man, be an alpha male. I mean, in the culture we live in, that has this massive attack on men by using women to do so. It's just absolutely obscene. I understand women's rights. I believe that women should have equal rights as far as being people who are able to pursue happiness and liberty and things of that nature. But when you try to take an entire gender of people and assert it over another one, then we have a problem.
We've just gone backwards, right?
Yeah.
Phil, anything else you wanted to say?
I just
Mention?
wanted to throw out some statistics. Is that currently roughly about 25% of males today think that asking a woman if you can buy her a drink is considered sexual harassment. Now, who do you think is putting that message out there? Who do you think?
It's got to be the left.
Yeah,
It's gotta be
exactly.
It's definitely gotta be
I've actually that brings up a good point, because I actually remember reading something not too long ago where a woman got offended because a man opened the door for her,
Oh, bro. That's just
and
bad.
she got all bent out of shape and said that was sexist. So men can't even be nice, can't even be kind to women.
Chivalry, man. Can't even do chivalry. Well, you know what? I want to end off this show and thank Phil for coming on. It's getting close now. We're getting close to an hour here. And I want to thank Phil. Phil, you have any last words? Anybody listening, you want to tell anybody that you would just like to impart to somebody who's maybe a beta male, maybe needs a little bit of alpha?
I think, just be true to yourself. And if, we're not saying everybody has to be an alpha male. Everybody has to fit a certain, prototype of a man.
Sure.
That's not being realistic, and that's not what we're saying. There's always been alpha males and beta males. They've always coexisted, and I feel like they can continue to coexist. But there's just something going on in the world today in the mass media that trying to get rid of one over the other is wrong. There's a place for both types, and we just need to be careful about where this is going, because we need strong males in the world now more than ever.
Oh man.
I think the angry feminists, they're seeing their chance to promote their agenda, and they want to, for them to, like you said before, get ahead, to take down the other gender. I feel like it's wrong. So people just need to wake up and be aware. Yeah, just be aware of what's going on. And just look out for the youth. Because they don't understand what's really going on. So and I have some younger people who look up to me as a mentor, and I try to just promote strength and them, being a man. And I just feel like just people need to speak up. People need to wake up and see what's going on. That's it.
Well, we want to thank
just
you,
have a
Phil.
voice.
Thank you, Phil, for coming on the show.
Yep, thank you.
And
thanks for having me.
we're grateful to have you on. And
Thanks,
I
Phil.
just want to plug. I want to plug our Facebook page. Go and like us at the Politically Incorrect Podcast on Facebook. Go and like us follow us on Instagram at the Politically Incorrect Pod on Instagram. And go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you like the content that's coming out, please go and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that we can continue to keep pumping out content and keep on having this show continue.
And Beto, don't let your wife hang out with Alyssa Milano, please, if you don't want to make it matters worse.
All right, everybody.
All right, everybody.
Have a good week. We'll
Thank
see you next
very
Monday.
Much. Politically Incorrect Pod out.